We're on. Hello, good evening. How is everyone? Let me get to YouTube and see what's going on. Okay, Doug is here. And he is so kind. He always gives me a time and date stamp on the chat at the beginning of every video, which is super helpful for me because the chat all blurs together and I get confused. So it's good. Hippie Go Lucky is here and says, "Hello, world." Hello, Hippie Go Lucky. Overcoming Understanding is here. Welcome, welcome. Christina is here. Hello. Oh, let's see. I was going to put. Oh, Overcoming Understanding says she's got a bad connection. I hope that is not. I hope that's on your end and not on mine. Is anybody else? How is everybody else's connection? Let's see. You're doing some figuring out. She says, "I don't know if I'm here or not." You're here. It's better now. Okay. Problem solved. I get panicked every time I see a bad connection thing. Because I'm always scared it's on my end. And what's problematic about that is I don't know how to fix it. Like that's why. Yep, you're here, Overcoming Understanding. Hey, Jaffa's here. Welcome. Asha, hello. Gina is here. Good evening, and says, "Good evening, Dana and fellow survivors." Entering in something in the description area here. Oops, and I'm entering it in wrong. From VIVING to thriving. Overcoming Understanding says, "I know we talk a lot about abusive relationships with like a significant other, but can we talk or discuss relationships with parents?" We can talk about whatever you would like to talk about. I definitely not, it's just all my opinion on stuff, but she says, "My narcissistic mother picks me apart like crazy." Okay, let me arranging the screen here. Asha says, "Yes, discussion of relationships with parents, please." Okay. So interesting and kind of good timing with that. What I was just entering in the description area, which will be available later, is our book club book for July, which is Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder: How to Move from Surviving to Thriving. And the author is a guy by the name of Pete Walker. Okay, I'm only like 15% according to my Kindle. Actually, it's not even my Kindle. It's like the desktop version where you read ebooks. But anyways, I'm only about 15% into it, and it's It's like fantastic. It's amazing. A guy, I think it was Shady Sand is the username in the support group that's on my website. I believe it was him, had recommended it. And I really thought it was going to be about complex post-traumatic stress disorder after these types of relationships. And so I was kind of like all gearing up to read a book about that. So far it's not. What the book is about it's so cool. It's all about childhoods and parent-child dynamics. It's freaking phenomenal. And like I had never oh gosh, like where to even start? And I'm only 15% into the book. I put the link down in the description. And then if you guys want, I'll be posting my notes here. I'm going to try to get them up by like the 5th of July. So you can go to the book club. If you go to my website, there's a tab that says book club, and it'll take you to the book club where you can read my notes, and then you can read what other people's notes and, join the conversation. But it's really interesting. So he talks about our dynamic with our parents and, basically how it kind of sets things up, how people go through different traumas. And it's really interesting because a lot of what he's saying is a lot of stuff that I have been kind of questioning and wondering as well, especially where I work, because I work with people with personality disorders and mental illness, and the vast majority of them have a lot of trauma in their past, and especially with like borderline personality disorder. And so he was saying that in the book, like how a lot of people, it's misdiagnosed trauma, that the CPTSD is the issue. It's not a personality disorder or even necessarily mental illness. It's PTSD that's the issue. And I would really agree with that. Like, and I've talked about this before in different videos. Like, I've seen people that have, as far as like borderline personality go, there's the ones that are, poor emotional regulation and, like very volatile, right? They kind of jump to feeling suicidal, these kinds of things. Oftentimes, those people, that group, are some, like, again, it's been my experience, have been some of the nicest people, and they're the ones that are, they're there for like other patients. They're the ones that are continually, to me, it's like extreme CPTSD, it's extreme codependency, and it's extreme CPTSD. So it's like they're not the same. That's just something that I have observed. But anyways, so he goes into the different dynamics with trauma in childhood and kind of how that sets up our relationship with like everybody and everything. Really, really interesting book. Highly, highly recommend it. So Asha was saying, I go back to the tools at the back of the book all the time. He really has helped bring about a lot of clarity. I am so excited. Like, I guess that I've already had quite a few aha moments. Just within, there's a link to it. I just posted in the chat. Just within like the first, reading it for like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes today. So really great book. But okay, so back to what you were saying, overcoming. Oh, wait, before, let me scroll up and stop the chat, and then we'll get into what you're saying. So another thing, okay. Somebody had asked at the end of the chat last night, I didn't see it until I shut it down, but they had asked multiple times, and I felt really bad when I saw it later that they had asked this question, and I didn't see it. They were asking about a therapy called EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprogramming. And so this is supposedly a very helpful therapy for people that have kind of unprocessed, right, types of trauma. So whether it's PTSD or complex post-traumatic stress disorder, really, really interesting stuff. I have heard quite a few, I have quite a few friends of mine that are therapists that absolutely love it. And Jaffa asks, how did I put the link up on there while I was talking? I already had it copied because I was putting it in the description, and then I just quickly copied it again and pasted it. So, okay, so it's neat. So, so what it is it's a movement. It's a repetitive movement. Okay, and it kind of, it's like a, what do they call it? Like a metronome kind of thing. So, in the goal of this, so a person looks at this movement, right? And it's not hypnosis, but a person looks at this and they kind of go side to side, like a, when we watch a tennis match, right? And the theory behind it is that your eyes are going to start tracking this, and it mimics the eye movement when a person is in like the deep state of REM sleep. And so why that's significant is this is kind of what they're thinking is when a person goes into REM sleep, any type of trauma or events of the day are up in our prefrontal cortex. And then when we sleep, it moves those events, especially the traumatic ones, down into our amygdala, which is way back here. When something traumatic happens, those events stay at the forefront of our brain. So like literally it's on your mind. It's at the forefront of your brain. My guess is the reason that it's right there and it's right in front of us and it's all we're thinking about over and over again is because, I mean, it makes sense, right? So if we're in danger some way, not just physically, right? So people think of PTSD, they think of it in terms of war, right? Or like, oh gosh, there's a tiger, right? So there's like this instant trauma, it triggers this fight or flight reaction. Well, if you're in any type of like ongoing trauma, especially like an abusive relationship, even if it's not physically abusive, if it's emotionally or psychologically abusive, that's, it's very, very damaging, right? So that also kicks off our fight or flight response. And so the brain doesn't know quite what to make of that. And it's really interesting stuff. So the brain rehashes this event, trying to figure out what happened, what it needs to do what do we need to do in order to keep ourselves safe next time. So in a situation where like a person has a trauma, let's say they get in a bad car accident, or let's say there's a tornado, right? And it tears through their neighborhood and all these houses are destroyed. This is when people start developing like coping mechanisms for something. So let's say a person lives in Kansas, right? And they have all these tornadoes that come through. They destroy a bunch of houses. Maybe the person is now terrified to go outside. Or maybe they're now, anytime the storm alert thing goes off, they have nightmares that last for days. So they're not able to like effectively process the event. But for that kind of a thing, it's more cause and effect, right? Like they know that their trigger is storms or storm warnings or the sound of the tornado siren. For problematic people, right, like narcissists and sociopaths, until we have an idea of what we're dealing with, right? And so a lot of times this stuff does go like misdiagnosed or totally undiagnosed. I mean, I went to several therapists and nobody even came close to even identifying that I had been in an abusive relationship of any kind. So if we don't have the vocabulary for what happened to us, if we don't have the framework of understanding of this is what the problematic behavior that you encountered, because we all are our own baseline for normal. And so if we're the kind of people that tend to be, like very forgiving and we're like, okay, well, they said some strange stuff or some uncool stuff, or we had some kind of crazy conversations, but you don't realize, okay, that's gaslighting. Okay, that's, this is verbal abuse. Okay, this is grinding down. Okay, this is devaluing. Like, okay, this is what this looks like, because I think a lot of people tend to kind of just chalk that up to, oh, well, they, it's their childhood, or, did I hear that correctly or whatever. And so all of these, behaviors, especially if there's like that sudden discard at the end of the relationship, right? Or things get so bad that now you're in the fight for your life and you're trying to get out of there. That's incredibly traumatic. And so it's at the forefront of our brain, and it kicks off that fight or flight. So that's why there are those feelings of hypervigilance and the night terrors and panic attacks and really emotional, vivid dreams where you might wake up screaming or crying or sweating, right? All of that, it's all adrenaline. It's all of these processes in our body that it's trying to move us to safety, right? So EMDR, it's really interesting. There's quite a few videos on it on YouTube. But it's really interesting to watch the different videos and to kind of see how it works. The sessions tend to last, and probably depends on the therapist that you go to, 60 to 90 minutes. A lot of people have had quite a decent amount of success within a few treatments. So, and then the concept too, if I understand it correctly, because I've never gone through it personally, I think I'm going to though, because when I really began looking into it, I was very fascinated with it. So like you would focus on a traumatic event, but then you're also focusing on this movement, and sometimes, and maybe it's all the time, I don't know, but you're replacing that emotional experience to something, like you're saying something out loud that's totally unrelated, that's positive. And so it's kind of like scrambling those neuro pathways. It's really interesting stuff. It's used a lot at they're using it more and more, I should say. I don't know if it's used a lot, but it's being used more and more at the veterans hospitals, and specifically working with PTSD. So interesting stuff. So okay, back to what you were saying, okay, about narcissistic parents. It's hard when you have kind of like what you were describing, overcoming understanding about having a mother who is overly involved, kind of giving a bunch of like unsolicited advice, right? And it can be, and that can be very undermining, right? So if it's not allowing you to kind of figure out who you are, if everything that you do is wrong, or if that's the message that's being sent, right, that everything you do is wrong, then it can really undermine, a person's self-confidence, their self-esteem, and so on. That book that I was mentioning earlier, the CPTSD book by Pete Walker, talks a lot about that. Like, it's really, really interesting. And I don't know. I hope you guys do, get the book from wherever, get it from your library. You can, wherever you want to get it from. And then join me. I'm going to definitely do a book club thing on it, but I'd also really like to do, I think, a whole video for sure on that book, because I think it's really going to be good. So also, before I forget, so there is a gal that is supposed to be here tonight. I've been messaging with her back and forth on Instagram, and she's overseas and she has some questions. I told her that the chat it gets chaotic. I cannot read and think and talk at the same time. And for her to mention in the chat of that she is from Instagram, because I'm not sure if she's going to have the same screen name or not, and for you guys to help get my attention, because she had some questions, and she's really, I know that everybody's going through a hard time, but she's really been going through it. So so try to catch my attention if you can, if she comes on. So yeah, that book, it's been so cool so far. So one of the things he was talking about was our different like defense mechanisms. So we have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And so, and how we just kind of deal with things differently. So narcissists, right, and I would say and sociopaths as well, have a fight response. So this is the whole gaining power and control over somebody. It's the mindset of it's me versus you. So it's a continually competitive mindset versus the vast majority of us out there, especially us, right, where we're more, we have a mindset of cooperation, whereas theirs is competition. But it's competition over like nothing, or things that we don't even perceive that like we're in competition, right? Like we're not playing a game, like we're just trying to have a relationship. And so it's just interesting. So it kind of talks about how these kind of unresolved, unmet needs develop differently in different people. And so then so that was the fight. The flight one, I think he was tying that one to obsessive compulsive disorder, if I remember correctly. People that became, very hypervigilant and very just obsessive and compulsive with their actions. I don't think he was meaning in terms of kind of what most people think of when they think of OCD, like, flipping on and off a light switch 40 times before you have to leave the house, or obsessive hand washing. I think it's more of, he was talking about like constant activity, which is interesting because that's something that I notice for sure within myself that I do. If I'm really stressed, I get it's really wild. I get really, really, really scattered, and it's almost like this self-defeating cycle, because then I'll think, oh no, everything is a mess, I need to do more, and so then I start doing more and more, which does not help. I need to like do less, right? So he touches on that, which is interesting. I'll be curious to go into that a little bit more. And then okay, Society Page says Travel to Forget is the person from Instagram. Fantastic. Okay, I'll be looking for her. And okay, so fight, flight, freeze is kind of a person's approach to like numbing out. And I like I said, I haven't really gotten that far in the book yet. I'm kind of wondering if he's talking about, excessive spending, excessive eating, shopping, drinking. For me, it would be sleep. That's my way of like my reaction. I always joke like I have no like survival mechanisms. Mine are like sleep and sarcasm. Like those are my two. I don't have fight or flight. Like those are my two. But then the other one, this was really interesting. The fawn one was kind of this excessive people pleasing in order to get our needs met. So it was like all of these, so like basically more of like the codependent personality type out there. So these are the 4 different ways that people tend to react to danger. Danger as far as either like real danger or the perception of danger, which I found absolutely fascinating. And so he was talking about the fawn response in terms of, if you know that there's going to be some sort of, blow up or situation, that a person's going to be overly, people pleasing in order to keep things calm, to avoid that quote unquote danger. Interesting stuff. Okay, Lauren, great question. Oh, there's lots of great questions and comments. Lauren says, how do you know when you're ready to start dating? I don't really think I am, but how do you stop assuming everyone is fake or lying to you? Okay, so there's a few parts to that I want to address. I would encourage you to not start dating again until you really, really, really trust your judgment. And dating after these types of relationships it's hard, right? Like I think we all know it's hard for the reasons that you're saying, right? I think I've told you guys before, I went on a date shortly after my relationship with Jack, and it was maybe about 2 months after that. I was totally not ready to, but I guess it was my way. I was so upset. I thought, you know what? This guy is a total con artist, and I'm not going to let him ruin my life. Like, I got tangled up with a freaking con artist. So he's not thinking about me. Like, he was going to use me, and like you guys know, and then I'm pretty sure that his plan was to kill me. So I thought, well, I'm just going to move on with my life, right? I went on a date with a guy. We were out at dinner. We were outside at like an outdoor patio cafe thing. 2 cute young girls come up. They asked me if I knew where another like a bar was. I didn't, and they left, right? Not a big thing. That situation spun me into paranoia like you wouldn't believe. And I asked him, I said, did you know those girls? And he's like, what? Like, no. And I was like, okay. And I just realized right then, like, okay, like I thought I could do this, but I'm a million miles away from being able to trust anybody. And it takes time to get that back. But for me, I found that my trust in other people, I started dating before I think I fully trusted other people. And I started dating for sure before I trusted my judgment. And so, I think, and I've talked about this before too. So I dated 2 different guys after Jack. The second guy that I dated, it was all of the same stuff again. It was the night terrors were kicking up. I was having panic attacks. He was, again, like Prince Charming. He was this really great guy. I couldn't figure out why I was feeling like this. And I kind of thought, well, maybe it's because I like him so much. Maybe it's because maybe it's like the fear of commitment scares me. Like, I didn't know. And so what I did, all I could think of, which was to ask, get feedback from friends of mine, right? And everybody loved him. And so I kind of thought, okay, then it is just me. Well, right, fast forward like 6 or so months, when that is this, like the same double life, the nonsense, the crazy, like all of it, right? My big lesson from that was there are no shortcuts to trusting your judgment. Like, you've really got to be at a place where you trust your judgment. And that's hard to do after these situations. And it does take time and it does take practice, but it is possible for that to come back. And that really, it comes back with time, and it comes back with moving slowly. So and again, like trusting your gut, right? So like following your peace. Like, it's all about following your peace, because deep down, So if you're feeling, remember, because red flags, they're not seen, they're felt, right? So if you're feeling red flags about a person, that is a really good sign to take a step back, because we don't have those funny feelings unless they're activated, unless there's a reason for them, right? So, and this is a concept that was talked about in the book Psychopath Free, where he talks about the concept of a constant. And so for me, my constant is my brother. He's a real stand-up guy. I just adore him. He's one of my favorite people. So, and he's a guy, right? So if I encounter any behavior that I think is even remotely squirrely, I ask myself, would my brother do this? And if the answer is no, and it generally is no, then I realize, okay, that's my baseline for determining what I'm experiencing. Because remember, the whole cognitive dissonance thing, right? So that sets in like a fog, and it sets in fast. This is why it's so important to move slow, and also to create a life that you love before you start dating. The more you can do that, and of course that's a work in progress, right? I mean, there's always, work that we can do, but get enough of a foundation established to where if you start dating, that you like your life so much that you have the mindset, consciously and subconsciously, which is even more key, that you only want people in your life that enhance it. And I know that might sound really obvious, but it's true. And so if you have that kind of mentality of being choosy, right, and over trying to get chosen, and you're moving slow, and you're in touch with how you feel, and you're trusting your judgment because you've been practicing using your judgment in other ways, right? With paying attention, it just all goes back to paying attention to how you feel. Paying attention to how you feel around people that you consider friends, or even if you're out at the bar, or you're out to lunch or whatever. Just paying attention to people's energy, I guess. That sounds hippie woo-woo, I know. But like paying attention to that. And then once you really get a good grip on that, it's going to make dating a lot easier, because, you're going to start seeing the love bombing and the problematic behavior for what it is. Like, now that your eyes are open to it, now that you have the vocabulary and the framework for what is problematic behavior, you're going to see it so much faster. And there are a lot of problematic people out there. Okay? And that's okay. It is what it is, right? So all any of us can do is to focus on, like, now that right? Like, this is what I don't want in my life, behavior wise. And these are the feelings that I don't want in my life from other people, whether it's a significant other or friends or what have you. Then you're going to gravitate more towards, like, what do you want? And you're going to want to be around people that, it's like I said, enhance your life, that make you feel good, hobbies and people and experiences that make you feel good. So, and trust, like building trust. So stopping assuming that people are lying to you, that just takes time. That takes time. Trust is earned. I think that's something that all of us tend to give really freely and easily and quickly, because we tend to think other people are like us, especially if you're with a person who's highly manipulative and they're doing the whole like rushing of intimacy, but they're doing it in a way where they're telling very personal stories early on. They're spending a lot of time, you're spending 6, 8, 10, 12 hours texting or Skyping or whatever. That really creates this sense of intimacy, this bond, right? But generally the stories that they're sharing, the things that they're doing, it's not real. So we create this bond to an illusion. So it's so important to go slow. And it just sometimes too, it just takes practice to go slow. If you've been going fast your whole life, and if you've had, if you're not used to paying attention to how you feel, if you're not used to, if you're more focused on how other people feel, I think, which is a lot of us, it just takes practice. So I would say, give it time, go slow, be good to yourself during all of this, and go from there. So, and you might feel, really hypervigilant at first. And I think in large part, it's probably because, we are. Like, we went through a very traumatic experience, and that's kind of the other thing, right? That it's a very isolating feeling that we have this knowledge, right? That there are these people out there, and a lot of society has no freaking clue. And they think we're nuts, right? Because they've never experienced it. So people that haven't experienced it, if you're talking to them about, red flags, and this is what I'm seeing, and everything, and if they're saying, oh, well, you've got to trust sometime, or, you've got to, quit looking for red flags, or these kinds of things, I get where that advice is coming from. However, it's like, I'd rather you err on the side of caution than not. So again, like you know deep down. Okay, is travel, this gal here, travel Instagram gal? Let's see, let me scroll up. Lisa says, yes, Dana told me to go out and feel people's energy, and I have. Last time I went out, a guy started talking to me, and I picked up on his smug grin. I was like, yikes, and I got out of there fast. Yeah. So, and it just takes practice, meeting people, and you'll know. Whether or not you listen to that intuition is another thing, but that goes back to the empty buckets thing, right? So if you fill your empty buckets before, it's like going grocery shopping, or it's like eating before you go grocery shopping. It's a lot easier to make healthy, nourishing decisions on a full stomach. If you're feeling lonely, that's like the last time, you do not want to date if you're lonely. Okay, let me see. Travel to forget. So, lots of questions. Okay, yeah, and people are answering it. Travel to Forget says, my question is, why does he not talk about crazy exes and tell me? He is still friends with all of his exes and used both of them to triangulate with me. It's because he's still using them. He's still triangulating them. And keep in mind that, they all, even though there's a lot of common behavior between them, how they all operate, they're still people. And so there's still like that different like variation in just people, right? So some emotional manipulators do a lot of gaslighting. Some don't do any at all, right? Some do name calling instead. Some do verbal abuse. Some do physical abuse. Some do financial abuse, right? So, and they all manipulate, but that's the kind of like the common denominator is they're all highly manipulative. Just the way that their behavior comes out, it comes out in different ways. So let's see. Yeah, Pink Shell says, and some do it all. Yeah, I know they do. They do. And those of you that have gone through all of it, and I think there's probably quite a few of you out there that have, I just want you to know how strong you are for getting out of that situation and for moving forward. Because that takes a ton of inner strength. I can only imagine. Nicole says, I'm a love addict, always attract abusive men. I'm trying to heal my inner child. I've had all abuse. It's broken me. So have you, Nicole, watched my video on it's red flags of codependency? The video is video like it's video number 1, but it's really like video number 6 on the playlist. It's video number 1 on love bombing. And in that video, I really go in depth about love addiction, or kind of the feelings of love addiction, why love bombing is so effective, and how people tend to keep finding themselves in this pattern over and over and over again. The concept of empty buckets is in that video. I really feel like out of all of the videos I've made, and I've made like 220 something by now, all of them I've made, that's my very favorite one. I think that one really provides like just the vast amount of clarity for a lot of people. Because I think we all, just like the emotional manipulators, right? Like the narcissists and the sociopaths have a lot of commonality. Well, so do we. And just like how their behaviors, there's a lot of commonality about how they go about things, how they perceive things, how they act, how they react, and who they target and why. In that video, I talk about there's just a lot of commonalities between us and our thought process and our actions and our emotions and all of it. So I would encourage you to watch that video. We'd mentioned a book earlier. It's gonna be, there's a link in the description if you want to look. I don't know if you can see it till this video technically gets posted on YouTube, but it's a book called Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder: From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. And you can get it, at Amazon or probably maybe at your library. I don't know, but fantastic book. And he talks a lot about, like inner child stuff and abuse, and like how to move forward from this. So those feelings of brokenness, we were talking about that earlier tonight in this live stream too, about different strategies and therapies and stuff out there for people that do feel this level of brokenness. And there's actually a couple. So we talked about EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprogramming. And then there's another, it's like kind of in the same vein. It might even be kind of the same thought process too behind it, called EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique or Emotional Freedom Therapy. I'm not sure what the T is, but it's known as the tapping therapy. So those two therapies are really, really good for helping people to process trauma. So I would look those up. If you have insurance, seeing about if you can find a therapist that does those, or possibly even calling like your local domestic violence shelter and seeing if they offer reduced therapy, or if they could refer you to an EMDR person at like a reduced rate if cost is a concern. So thank you. Josh says, oh, hey, Josh. Josh says, emotional freedom techniques. Cool. Thank you. Let me see. The video that I was talking about. Let's see. The video that I was talking about, Josh, can you see if you can get that link? It's the playlist for my red flags of codependency. Michelle says, I'm still confused about all of this. My ex-boyfriend accused me and still accused me of cheating on him to the point I really thought and started admitting to whatever he told me to say. Yes. So, the comments won't let you post. Okay. If you can go to my website, go to thriveafterabuse.com, and then there's a tab on there. It'll redirect you to my old website, and then it says red flags of codependency, if you don't mind. Thank you. Okay, so Michelle, what you're describing is kind of a combination of projection, which a lot of them do, and gaslighting. So projection, it's like you said, it's really wild stuff when you encounter it. Crazy making, right? Like absolutely crazy making. So what they do is when they're generally up to something, they will they'll accuse us of it, or they're going to start it's weird. So Jack was doing that to me as well. Like accusing me of cheating. He was going through my laundry. God only knows what he thought he was going to find. And I thought it was because he had told me his ex-wife had cheated on him. Actually, none of that was true. He cheated on her. But I didn't know that until after I left. But yeah, continually accusing me of things. So this is very common. They'll start accusing their partner of what they're actually up to. It's a weird thing that our brain does. It's like a defense mechanism. If we can't handle our behavior, then the brain takes the behavior and it puts it on somebody else. That's one of the things that can make these relationships so dangerous, because these people then really convince themselves that they are justified in taking whatever action necessary, because in their mind, they're now a victim of us, right? So it's sort of like we have somehow been lying, cheating, manipulating, abusing. A lot of, partners of narcissists or children of narcissists are accused of being manipulative, being abusive, doing all of these things, and they're not. So when a lot of people get out of these relationships, they often wonder, because they think they've been told for so long that they are the problem, that they believe it. And so then they get out of these relationships and they're thinking, they might be telling other people, or maybe even going into therapy thinking, oh my gosh, I'm a narcissist. I'm manipulative. I'm controlling. I am abusive. And hopefully a good therapist can spot that and say, let's take a step back. Who told you this, right? And kind of work their way back from there, because that kind of stuff is crazy making. The other term that you've probably encountered if you've been doing projection, because there's a kind of a certain level of denial. This is just what I've noticed. If a person's in that level of denial to where they're projecting their behavior, then they're probably also doing gaslighting, which is another form. I think sometimes it's for sure intentional, but I think sometimes too, it's also the brain's way of justifying things. So gaslighting is where they will deny what's going on. So let's say, for example, you guys agree to meet at the park at 2 o'clock, right? And then 10 seconds later, you say, okay, I'll meet you at 2. And he'll say, no, I said 3. And you're like, wait, what? Like, and it's these little, and it tends to start off small. So it's like these little things where you think to yourself, did I mishear him or her? Am I mishearing them? Am I misremembering? And then it's like this, you slowly kind of start losing touch with reality. It erodes a person's trust in themselves and in their reality. It's very, very, very damaging. So yeah, crazy. Crazy stuff. Hey, Nana's here. Let me make some more moderators this time. Hold on, before the trolls arrive. So hold on a second here. Yeah, Pink Shell says, and then you stop asking questions because you know you'll never get a straight answer. Yeah, they do that. And this is one of the things. So I was talking to somebody who had joined the Facebook. Sorry, I'm having crazy hair and it's freaking me out. Hold on. Okay. That's not working at all. So whatever. Okay. I was talking to a gal who had joined our Facebook group the other day. I've got to stop the chat. Hold on a second. Sorry. It's out of the corner of my eye and it's... Okay, so Christopher's talking about gaslighting too. He says, it felt like the gaslighting was intentional crazy making. I think for some of them, it is very intentional. I think some of them really enjoy playing with their prey, right? It's sort of like a cat playing with a mouse. And it's just this mental mind scramble, right? That they do. I think a lot of them, some of them do it intentionally. I think sometimes too, it's not necessarily intentional. The human brain is really weird. Either way, it's damaging. Like, you need to get out of that situation. If a person is not, if a relationship is not, if it does not have like open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication, if it's not based on dignity and respect, I would strongly suggest consider getting out of there, because that's what's necessary for any type of healthy relationship, right? So anything less than that can be very, very damaging, and it often is. And then what's scary about that is because if that damaging behavior, right, if that diminishing, devaluing behavior becomes your new normal, then the behavior is going to have to get worse and worse for it to register to you as problematic. So this is how these types of relationships continue to get bad. And it takes them a while to see it. Because, if they've already stayed with a person through lying or through cheating or through, verbal abuse or emotional abuse and it's just like the slow descent into madness is really what it is. So if a person's staying through all of that, right, thinking that their partner is another normal human being who has the capacity to change, and they just kind of think, well, given enough time or love or understanding or rehab or therapy or church, that this person will change. But this other person's not changing. If anything, their behavior is getting worse. So it's important that you see things for what they are and to really get clear in your mind, kind of where is your line in the sand? At what point where are your deal breakers, right? Like, where is your deal breaker line? And then when it gets there, then okay, that's my sign, like I need to go. So yes, and so Travel was saying, that he was completely denying this existence of a package that they got. And again, so like this is what they do, and that's crazy making, because they'll say things like, you could see a text message, right? Like you saw a package at your door, right? And they're saying, what package? There's no package. Or like, what text? There was no text. You just made that up. Like, nah. This is how people, like, this is why it's called crazy making behavior, right? Because it's crazy making. And normal people don't do this. So, and again, like, if you still think that if you don't know about the term gaslighting, if you don't know what this is, then odds are you're thinking that you're with another normal human being. And if you've never experienced that before, which most people haven't, right? It's easy to think like, why would they lie about that? I mean, it's stuff that doesn't make sense. And yeah, she says, I touched the package and I moved it aside. I had it in my hands. Right. So like I would say like a common phrase that you might hear a narcissist say in regards to that would be something along the lines of, well, who are you going to believe? Me or your lying eyes? That's gaslighting. That's gaslighting. It's what are you going to believe, my reality, or are you going to believe yours? And this also has to do with a term called cognitive dissonance, okay? So cognitive dissonance is, it sets in like a fog, right? And cognitive dissonance is when our beliefs don't match our behaviors. So if our beliefs, or another way, or if our thoughts don't match our actions, then we experience what's known as cognitive dissonance, which is mental distress. And that mental distress is because human beings, we need our thoughts to match our actions. That way, things that we're doing make sense to us, right? So, and when they don't make sense, so cognitive dissonance is when we start justifying. We have to bridge that gap. So our thoughts and actions do make sense. So we tend to justify things. So either our thought has to change to match our action, or our action has to change to match our thoughts. So let me give you an example. Okay, so you mentioned this package, right? You got this package, you were holding the package, the package existed. He's saying, there's no package, what package? So if your action, because that's crazy, right? That's crazy behavior on his part. If your action is going to be, I'm going to stay with this person, I'm going to stay in this relationship, and your thought is that this relationship can be saved, right? Because that's what you're doing. Like, you're in the relationship, you're thinking that you're in a relationship with a normal human being, but then you encounter something like that, right? Which gives you a new thought of, maybe this person's not so normal after all. So now you have this mental distress going on, because now you have the thought of, this person is totally lying to me, but if you're going to stay, and like, I can't stay with a liar, right? So then you've got to somehow justify, you've got to make yourself okay with the action of continuing to stay. And so then we tell ourselves, well, maybe that package, maybe that was a weird dream. Maybe I didn't see that. Maybe he's lying to me for a good reason. Maybe he's got some sort of issue with his ex in his past, and he had trust issues with her, and so that's why he's being squirrely about this. You're going to tell yourself whatever you need to tell yourself to justify your action to stay with him. So that's how that happens. Kind of like with, like a Jerry Springer episode, right? So, Jerry Springer, or like Maury, right? Like, remember that show, Maury? How they would have people on and they would do like paternity tests, and the whole audience, like, it's very clear to everybody else in the audience that this one person is screwing around, right? And I mean, and it could be like very obvious, like their partner, let's say their partner, is Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, like you name it, and then they have like all these different children, right? So, but they're denying it. They want to believe. They really want to believe their partner. And this partner's been lying and lying, and this partner's got STDs. The partner's got, you know, like all kinds of squirrely behavior, like credit card debt that they didn't know about, fake names, hotel receipts. The, you know, if it walks like a duck and looks like a duck, it's a duck, right? Everybody else can see this a mile away, but this person's still in denial. And so, and even with paternity tests, whenever this manipulative person gives an excuse, if the person wants to stay in that relationship, they're going to continue taking the excuses because they want to stay. So it's sad, right? But the reason that everybody else can see it and not the person that's in it isn't because the person that's in the relationship is dumb, right? It's because the person that's in the relationship is emotionally invested. And so when we're emotionally invested, especially in the outcome of our actions, that cognitive dissonance is really, really thick. So it's really, really wild stuff. Marie says, my ex-narcissist would fake cry. Maybe he was faking as a cover. Overcoming Understanding says, yes, they also stay super calm when things were serious. Yes, so, yep, Overcoming says they have inappropriate emotions. Yes, they do. It's inappropriate emotions, and they're also very like shallow emotions, right? So if I were to say, I love my new phone, right? I love my new phone. I love the color of this phone case. To me, there's a difference between saying I love my phone and I love my brother. But to them, there's not a lot of difference there. Both things are objects to them, and both are totally disposable. Like there's no loyalty, there's no depth, we all serve a purpose to them. That's it. They use people for what they want at the time, and then that's it. Oh my gosh. Michelle says, does meth use make it worse? My nephew called him. I can't remember what it was. Meth use makes everything worse, I think, as a general rule of thumb, but especially a person who's not in the reality, right? So if they're already being paranoid, if they're already, accusing you of things, if they're already like highly suspicious, if they're already feeling agitated and irritated and aggressive, adding drugs, especially meth or cocaine, or, even, I would say even like Adderall or any type of like stimulant, or, anything that can make a person aggressive at all, would really make things worse, a lot worse. So Kai Cools asks, what things have people found they will do when they find out you're doing no contact? Well, mine, Steve, when I went no contact, he began calling me obsessively, because I was like, once I realized what was going on, then it was and he owed me money. So like I had already gone through such hell with Jack and recovering from all of that it was a lot easier the second time around, I have to say. So I was able to really kind of gather my wits about me pretty quickly, and very like just emotionally detached. It was just like, okay, like this is not my first rodeo. I got this. But I had to play nicey nice on the phone, even though I know he was back living with his wife, trying to convince me to move 26 hours away back to where we were from, and, like ridiculous stuff. So once I got, what I needed, what he owed me was really what it was, back, then I told him, I very quickly went no contact. He flipped out and called me like nonstop, and was leaving voicemail after voicemail after voicemail. Then it was threats of, he told me that he took a bunch of Adderall and he'd been drinking, and he wasn't coping, and he was going to be up all night, and he was going to be calling me all night because, now he was on Adderall and all this stuff. And, that he might just end up killing himself, and, he needed to talk to me, just talk to me. Dana, just answered the phone. Like, why weren't you answering the phone? I just want to, I just have something to say. And then it was email after email. I mean, like, I don't even know, probably 50 emails that night. I never responded. He then called my mother. I called my dad. I was hysterical by that point. I called my dad. I said, if he calls, you guys, don't answer. Do not talk to him. I don't know. Like he's gone crazy. He called thank goodness both my parents too were also out of state, in different states. He called my mom. My mom answered, because I wasn't able to get through to her. And she, my mom was like very, very nice to people all the time. And so she was very pleasant. And he told her, he said, just have Dana check her email. And it was like a brief conversation with them. It was a total power and control move. And he I think texted, I think he left a voicemail saying something along the lines of, that wasn't so hard now, was it? Like, why did you have to make me call your mom? She's a very nice lady, have a good life. It was just like, he just had to get that last dig in. So, and then I don't even really know what he wanted me to see on my email. He'd emailed me a bunch of times, but none of it was like, worth all of that. So I don't frickin' know. But yeah, the point is, they will say whatever they need to say or do whatever they need to do in order to get you to reopen contact. Even if it's not like a full out Hoover, even if they're not trying to suck you back in, if you end the game before they do, because remember, there's two different realities, right? So you've got reality one people who have that competitive reality, right? It's the me versus you. It's the power and control mindset, which is that of a narcissist or a sociopath. Then you have our reality, which is one of cooperation. You're dealing with the person who's by cooperation, I mean solutions oriented, right? So if you're dealing with the person who is not looking for, this is why their conversations don't go anywhere, right? This is why things go so far off track. This is why and how you get roped into these conversations from hell with these people that in the gaslighting and then the denying that they I never, saw that box. There was no box, or, that's when you get stuff like that, because that's their way of trying to keep power and control over the situation, over your perception of the situation. So, so I think, with Steve, it wasn't that he was trying to suck me back in, because he knew that I knew. So then it's game over, right? It was him just wanting to end things on his terms because I called the game off before he could. Crazy. Travel to Forget says also, why did he take me home from Nevada to North Dakota to meet his parents? Isn't that a waste of time? Well, I don't know. Hey, Nan and Kayla are both here. Hi. That's so cool. Sorry, that's Nan is one of my moderators in my support group, and also one of my favorite people, and she talks about her daughter a lot, and she's an awesome mom, and so it's neat that they're both here. Okay, let's see. Gosh, lots and lots of chats, questions and stuff. Okay, so travel, that's a really great question. They're very impulsive, so they do things that, again, it doesn't make sense to the rest of us, right? So, my situation, we moved from a totally different state to Michigan, 26 hours away. He upped and left his wife. He filed paperwork to divorce her. He sold his car. He quit his job. He gave away his dog, okay, to move with me. Did all of that. The whole time, it turns out he was still talking to his ex-wife and was telling her that he was miserable. And I don't really know if she necessarily, I don't know at what point she found out that I was in the picture, but he moved all the way out here. He was here for a few weeks, not even a month, and then left and had the expense of having to rent a U-Haul and everything, and then moved back. It was, and again, like I really feel like the reason he moved back is because he couldn't find a job out here that he felt was worth his skill level. like that's a lot. That's like multiple things to do in your life if you're not serious about it. So, that's not uncommon. Like that's what they do. So it's just part of that. That's what that impulsive behavior looks like in motion. So, oh gosh, I'm sorry. My hair is so gross. It is so humid out, and my bangs need to be cut. And so oh God, okay. It's probably, I don't know, it's probably a lot more distracting for me than it is you. But yes, oh, that's such a great point. Yes, okay, Staying Alive says, but Dana, his dramatic actions make you feel loved at the time. Yes, so that's a great point. They do, right? Because it's like something out of a frickin' movie. It's like this intensity of like, you know what it reminds me of? Do you guys remember that Saturday Night Live skit with Chris Kattan where he would dress up like Mango? Like, does anybody else remember this? It was hilarious. It was this little prissy prima donna, and he like would go around, and everybody was so after him. Like, he was so amazing, right? And he would just be like, oh, like you cannot have the mango. And then as soon as they like would turn, they'd be like, oh, okay, I guess like we can't talk to him because he's too cool. As soon as they were to like lose interest, he would like reach out to them and then like try to like lure them back in. And it was this push pull dynamic. That's how it is with a narcissist, these relationships, because the highs are really high, the lows are really low, and in between there's a lot of this like over the top stuff that goes on, right? So you might get, like 100 red roses delivered to work that they're sorry, or 50 phone calls, or with Steve, his wife even told me when we began talking, we found out what was going on. She told me, she said, Dana, he is persistent. Like, he will not take no for an answer. If because she was gonna kick him out, and then and then of course she's all concerned, like, what if it's this whole manipulation, and like, I was in on it, and then he was gonna come back to me, and on and on, and which, like, no. But she said, she's like, if I kick him out, she's like, he will show up on your doorstep. And I kept telling her, I'll call her Molly. I would say, Molly, I like yes, if I lived like an hour away like I did before, yes, fully believe that he would have shown up on my doorstep, with a dozen red roses and saying all the right things. Because I lived 26 hours away, that was a lot more difficult, thank goodness. So they do that, a lot of that over the top thing, and they do that, the love bombing, when they're sorry. And I guess that starts the whole cycle again, right? But when you first meet, that's what a lot of people get caught up in, is they might even use a lot of lines from movies, and they know things about you. So one of the things that Jack did, I actually hadn't even thought about this or connected this until I was in one of the support groups and I was talking to a gal in there about it. And she was asking me, why would they like romantic comedies if they're not highly emotional? And then it was sort of like, oh, it's because everything about him is so theatrical, right? It's all an act. Jack would say, he would use the line from the movie The Princess Bride on me, where Wesley would tell Buttercup, as you wish, because I had told him, like, because he was saying, like, oh, I love you, like, right away. And I was like, dude, back it up. Like, I just got divorced. I am a million miles away from having my heart open. Like, I should not have been dating, right? I was way lost in grief and depression, and I was lonely, right? Like, don't date when you're lonely. And all of that. And so he was doing really, he knew that was one of my favorite movies, and he is quoting this movie, and he's saying that he loves me, but he's not really saying it. And of course, that gets a person, right? So it's like, oh, how romantic, how sweet, how considerate. It's all love bombing. It's nonsense. Travel to Forget says, does narcissistic rage happen all the time? How often should it occur to qualify as a red flag? For example, we made up the next day and he said, look at what you made me do. Okay, two things with that. If anybody hurts you physically, to me, that's enough. That's not a red flag. That's a deal breaker in my book. Like, because it's when a person mentally can go there, then they're probably going to keep going there. And that's going to be like this boundary push. So I would not even entertain any type of like physical abuse whatsoever. The fact that he lacked accountability for his action just reinforces that. So this is that right there is the common phrase of all abusive people, regardless of the abuse, whether it's verbal or emotional or psychological or sexual or physical or what have you. It's the whole, look at what you made me do, right? That you drove me to this. Like, that we should somehow know better, that their abusive behavior is somehow our fault. It does not work that way. It does not work that way, right? That was his response that he chose to a situation. So this is another thing that's really crazy and interesting with abusive people is. So I was talking a little bit, earlier about this book, the CPTSD from Surviving to Thriving, and how the author talks about the different coping mechanisms that people develop and that turn into personality styles later on. And so he was describing narcissism as a fight response. I just love that. Like, I love the way that he carved that out. To me, that just makes so much sense. So if a person has that fight response, like that's kind of at the core of their personality, right? That's the core of all abusive behavior, is the need for power and control, right? Again, it's that, remember the two mindsets we talked about? You've got one that's based in competition, one that's based in cooperation. So if you've got a competitive person, which is trying to gain power and control over another person, whether it's with words or emotions or strength, right, or finances, all of that's problematic. But here's where it's really, to me, it's very interesting. So the fight personality type with narcissists, they get triggered, right, in ways that are obvious, that are seen, right, kind of like with a narcissistic injury. So narcissistic rage happens after they encounter generally a narcissistic injury. So if you were to criticize his clothes or his education or how much he made, right, or something, right, that tends to, even if you caught him cheating, And then he flies into a rage and then beats you up, right? And this happens a lot. And it's the whole, look at what you made me do. It's very backwards wiring. Their way of dealing with and coping with anything in life is that fight response. It's that, power over. It's that competitive mindset. But here's also where take it a step further, where it gets interesting, is that it's a narcissistic injury that it's real, like you actually say something, right, and it gets them, or it's perceived. That's where it gets fascinating, and that's why you can't win, because you're not dealing with a person who's in reality. So you could say something, let's say if they went grocery shopping, right? And you open up the fridge and you make a comment and you say something like, oh, hey, I noticed that you got Pepsi instead of Coke, right? And in their mind, they perceive that some screwy way where you're saying that you don't like Pepsi, that what they did is not good enough, that you really wanted something else instead. And then all of a sudden they start in on you and they start yelling and they're all upset. And you're thinking in your mind, this came out of a left field. Like why is this person yelling, right? That's why, because they're being triggered by something that's not really going on. It's weird, and I would love to really get more in depth with all of that, because you can't work with that behavior. And yeah. Goofy first says, oh, if I came back from the store buying the wrong item, he would go into a rage saying, I don't care about him. If I really got him and understood him, I'd get the right item. Yes. That's the thing. So, oh gosh, what is that author's name? I keep forgetting it, and I love her work. Patricia Evans, I think, is the gal that I'm thinking of. She talks about this. It was another book club book that we had. I believe it was the book on controlling people. Again, highly recommend it. She talks about abusive people in terms of like having this concept of like one mind. So in their mind, you are a mind reader. Like that you guys have the same thoughts, that you're on the same wavelength. So if you act in a way that they don't think you should act, then they freak out. Well, that's a really hard line. It's an impossible line to walk, right? Because you don't know what their expectations are. And of course they change, right? So even if you think, oh, well, I really know that they love having lasagna for dinner on Fridays, right? Let's say. And it's Friday and you make lasagna, and then they come in from work, and then they flip out saying, what are you thinking? Like, we don't, it's 105 degrees out. Why would you make lasagna? And like, here you are trying to do a good thing, but like in their mind, you should know, even though you've always had lasagna every Friday night, that this night, it's too hot outside to make lasagna. You can't keep up with that, like, because you're not in their head. So you can't anticipate what they're saying, or what they're thinking. This is why it's a no-win situation. And then here's the added crazy making thing. So even if you were to try to keep up with this, right? This is called walking on eggshells, right? So if you're trying to walk on eggshells, you're trying to be a better partner and anticipate their needs more and more. But again, right? Because we can't, because their needs are changing as their hormones change, as the weather changes, as, whatever, right? As their stress level changes. And you're walking on eggshells with them. It's just, even if you can anticipate their behavior, because they have the mindset of competition, of power over, especially if they're more on like the sadistic side of that spectrum, that's when they're going to put you in they're going to start creating these no-win situations. So even if you're doing things right, they're still going to set it up to where you lose, because it makes them feel smug and superior and significant. And it's like, I'm up here, you're down here. And it's just this series of games all the time, everything. It's not just when you're fighting, it's if a narcissist is communicating with you, it's a power struggle. Everything with them is a power struggle. So Alicia says, I'm sorry to ask for the same advice again, but I can't get over this experience. Hold on a second. My ex manipulated me into trusting him again just to sleep with me, and then he kicked me out of his place in the middle of the night, and I'm having a hard time moving on. That's a great question, Jimmy. That's a really great response to that. He says, to ask yourself, if I wasn't lonely and if I had my buckets filled, would I still be with this person? So I think that's a great question to ask yourself, because we fall for their words, right? When it's the cognitive dissonance that sets in. That's what's getting you. This is why I encourage people, and it's hard, and I get it, and please don't beat yourself up about it. I mean, people on average leave 7 times before they leave for good. It often takes, it's that cognitive dissonance, right? So like you go through it and you're like, well, was it really that bad? Am I making a big deal out of things? Am I giving this person the label of a narcissist because I'm like angry and hurt because they cheated? Or is their behavior really problematic? And then, we stay away for like a week, and then the kind of nostalgia kicks in, right? And we're like, well, boy, man, those good times were really good, and maybe the bad times weren't that bad. Maybe the bad times were workable. Maybe it's workable. Maybe I just need to try harder. Maybe we can go to therapy or church, or they can go to rehab, or, we're justifying it, right? Like, that's cognitive dissonance. And then of course they're most likely doing the hoovering. They're saying, baby, I really miss you, and you're always going to be the one for me, and you make me so crazy. Like, remember, like, this is what you made me do. You make me so crazy, but damn, I still love you, right? And it's the whole saying of hungry hearts eat lies. So if we're feeling lonely, and these relationships will make anybody really lonely, especially if you've lost friends over it, right? Then you kind of like look around and there's not a lot of people there, and you really have to start from ground zero. So I encourage people, for when the relationship ends, you most likely will experience cognitive dissonance. It just happens. It happens. So expect it to happen, and then try to anticipate and prepare yourself as much as you possibly can. So I encourage people to make what I call for when you miss him or her list, right? And on that list, you write down all of the reasons as to why you need to not go back. And when you find yourself missing that person, when nostalgia does start setting in, you can pull out that list and you can read it, and you're like, oh, right, because he suckered me back in with all of these, BS promises, and I fell for it. And so, and then he threw me out of his house in the middle of the night. Here's, and then on and on and on, right? Like, everything that he's done, all the reasons why you need to leave. Here's another thing about the pain that you're experiencing, because it is painful, right? And it's intentional, because for him, it makes him feel smug and superior that he can snap his fingers and say a few words, and poof, a great woman appears, right? That he can just use and then discard. I would encourage you that you reframe your understanding of the pain that you're in and look at it as it has to hurt this much because you have to leave. So the pain is a good thing. It's your brain and body's way of trying to keep you safe. So, just like really internalizing that. And so when you're feeling that heartache, when you're having a hard time moving forward, to just like I know it sounds crazy and hippie woo woo, but like giving yourself a hug and just being like, honey, like just hang in there. Like, I know it hurts, but it needs to hurt because you have got to move on. Because love doesn't hurt, right? It's the lack of love that hurts. So, let's see. Let me scroll down here. Get some questions. Cha. Yeah, Hippie-Go-Lucky says, normal people can seem boring when you compare them to narcissists because narcissists are so good at drama and making themselves look so special. It's that. And I think another reason that normal people seem flat and boring, because I'm not into drama. Like I really value peace in my life, it's the love bombing and that the mirroring, right? So it's that intense soulmate connection where, especially, it's the whirlwind where all of a sudden you find yourself on the phone or talking or going out with them or spending, you basically like a move in together after your 5th date, that kind of stuff. And we're, it's hard to find that many people in life that you really, really click with. And I think in general, but, they move so quick. And so for us, it's so hard to move on because we're like, wow, we got along on so many levels, but we didn't, right? Because it was a manufactured soulmate connection. They were being the perfect person. So they were saying all of the perfect things. They were acting in all of the perfect ways. They were showing you. Like, that's what you liked. Like, you didn't like them. They're nothing. There's smoke and mirrors. There's nothing there to like. Right? So what we liked was all of our good qualities. It's so weird to like really fully wrap your mind around that. I think that took me quite a while to fully get, but it's true. Like, what you liked was you. So, and this goes back into building a life that you love. When you build a life that you love, you're not looking outward to have somebody like complete you, right? Because all of those things about you that you like, you're living that. And you're most likely attracting friends, sincere friends into your life that like the same things. And once you start doing that, once you start really getting quality people in your life and you're doing quality things and you're living a life that you love, you'll see you will see the love bombing and the rushing of intimacy and the mirroring and the soulmate connection, that all happens within like 10 days of knowing them. That will come across as ridiculous, over the top, immature, and disgusting. Like, it will lose all of its appeal. Like, you will just see it for what it is, and it's not going to scare you. It's not going to anything you. You're just going to look at it and be like, that's crazy, right? No. Because when you're around authentic people long enough, because that's what I think we're all craving, right? Is a sincere, in-depth relationship with another person. And that can come in many forms, right? It can come with a partner, or it can come with friends, and most importantly, it needs to happen with ourselves, So getting in tune with who you are, realizing that you have value, filling up your buckets, keeping your buckets filled on a regular basis, and you know, the empty buckets thing is huge. So, Diaries of Ex Tina. These people and their screen names are so funny. Yes. Okay. Yes. Sincerity to us means intensity. Yes. Okay. I'm going to touch on that in a second. Diaries of Ex Tina says, or when I try to join a dating website to try to move on, he's there again stalking me. Okay. First off, dating websites, to me, that is really like looking for a needle in a haystack. And that is like narc central. I mean, there are I'm not saying that you can't find quality on a dating website. I think nowadays it's a lot harder. So it's even more important that you have your buckets filled and that you go slow and you just like trust but verify, right? Over time. Like don't trust right away, right? But kind of when you're getting to know a person, you're somewhat taking them for face value, but verify. Because there's a lot of married people on dating sites. There's just, to me, it's like red flag city. Definitely don't go on dating sites until you really trust your judgment and that you're okay with walking away from a situation that doesn't meet your needs. I'm a big fan, I talk about this site all the time, of meetup.com. Love them, love them. I've met some of my closest friends out here from different meetup groups. It is just a really great way to meet people. So they're often free. The groups are or really reduced cost. They have meetup groups all over the world, and generally in most cities, I mean, you might have to, if you live in like a small city, you might have to drive a little ways to find meetups, but join like 20. Seriously. You don't have to go to every single thing that they do, but join 20 that you think you'd really like. So if you're interested in photography or outdoor adventure or going out to dinner or playing board games or playing trivia or gardening or going, if you've got you've got a pit bull, like they have pit bull clubs, right? People go out and they go to the dog parks with their dogs or kind of what have you. Joining those different groups, it's based around your interests. You're going to have a good time anyhow. You're going to be meeting other people, men and women, that are there to also meet people. So most, they're all friendly. They're all there to meet people. And it's a really great way to meet people based around things that you enjoy. So either as friends or as potentially dating people. I vote for that, especially if you've got this guy stalking you again on dating sites. Like, go to Meetup. You can create a different profile. You can create, use a different picture so we can't easily find you there. You can create a different name, like a screen name there, and join groups that way. That's what I would vote for. Goofy Fur says, I could never talk to the narcissist about real situations because all of our talks were surrounded by how I'm such an awful person. Right. And so, and that's that mindset, right? That's the difference between our mindset, the cooperation mindset, versus the competition mindset. And so for us, and that's what's crazy making, right? So here we are in a fight, or not even a fight, maybe you're having a disagreement about something, or like I mentioned earlier, they go grocery shopping. You mentioned something about, oh, I see you bought Pepsi instead of Coke, like you normally buy Coke, right? Or they didn't buy ingredients for lasagna. And again, like you guys have lasagna every Friday night, and you happen to mention it, and they freak out, and then they go on the attack. We, on the receiving end of that, that does not compute, because that's not how we think, right? So we're thinking we really like peace in our life, this is not a big deal. You bought a different type of pop. You like didn't buy stuff for lasagna. So let's like, you're trying to be the peacemaker, right? Like you're trying to figure out how on earth, why is this person acting this way? Why are they being so reactive? How can I make the situation better? Right? And not realizing that they're totally okay with the situation being what it is. And that they now view you like their fight or flight mechanism has been tripped. Now you are the enemy. And now they must win. Like that's the mindset. And again, like that's why it can get so dangerous so quickly, because you're just like, you're not dealing with a person, you're dealing with a very primal, deep survival instinct is what you're dealing with. So when you're seeing that fight mechanism trip in them, and they're all of us, they go from like totally calm to flying into a rage, or maybe it's not an obvious rage, maybe it's like a subtle rage, right? Where it's that subtle grinding down, where now maybe they're not even calling you names, but maybe it's just all of these implications that you're somehow too sensitive, too emotional, whatever. It's like this slow, diminishing, grinding down kind of behavior. It's that same power and control mindset. It's me versus you. And again, none of us can work with that, because they're looking for a fight. Like they're looking for a fight, and they're looking to win a fight, but the fight's in their freaking mind. Like it's a one-way ticket to crazy town. Like you're just not going to win that, or even have a fair chance at getting out of it. I mean, that's how these arguments, they get so tangled up, right? And like they're throwing in issues from 10 years ago, and nothing ever gets resolved. I think that's a really great way to tell, like, you're with an emotional manipulator, nothing ever gets resolved. And you find yourself apologizing for things that you might not have ever done, or crazier yet, you find yourself apologizing for things that they did. Because if you don't work to keep the peace, that they're going to leave. And a lot of us don't want that to happen. And that's a problem, right? Okay. So staying alive, great question, says, we're talking with our perception of this roller coaster that they're on, of the extreme highs and then the extreme lows, right? The 3 dozen flowers on our, delivered to work as an apology, and then the extreme lows of, we found out they're living a double life. Ocean of difference between the two there. Normal people don't have that, just FYI. So, this sincerity on that upswing during that love bombing, when you are getting 50 phone calls or 100 red roses, or, cards, or all of this stuff where I'm so sorry, and, just blah, blah, blah. So Staying Alive is saying maybe we mistake that sincerity. Maybe sincerity to us means intensity. Yes. Okay. So for us to move on after these relationships, a lot of us, I think, do gravitate towards, other people dynamics feel flat. So, I think we're all looking for, a sincere dynamic with other people, but we're also, I think it's because we're so starved out, right? If you're starved out, then you're looking for that amazingness like right away, and that takes time. There's no shortcuts, right? Like it takes time for that to grow. So Staying Alive says, why do survivors end up loving like a narcissist to a person who is authentic? Why do we mimic their ways of loving? That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I did that. I'm trying to think I'll be curious to know if other people did that. I don't know if I necessarily did that. I guess maybe I did. Some of the love bombing and stuff. I guess because to me it felt so good. It felt so good to, and I'm okay. Uh, I think sometimes like the love bombing and you're listening to your partner and you're finding out what do they really like. That maybe their former partner never cooked for them. I must be hungry. Like I'm talking about a lot of food tonight. Their former partner never cooked for them, and we might think, oh well, you know what? Then I'm gonna make sure to cook for them, or I'm gonna really treat them well in this area. I think it kind of depends on kind of like the whole love languages. Like, what is your love language? If it's acts of service, then you might find yourself really doing that. I think it just depends on the person. But I think, most people, we tend to do what feels good. So if we experience a lot of the elements of love bombing that made us feel really good, if we want to make somebody else feel really good, to me, it makes sense that we would do a lot of the same kind of stuff. So if our narcissist sent us a lot of like different memes or tagged us in Facebook posts or sent us YouTube videos or stuff like that, we might pick up that behavior, and because it felt good, it made us feel important, right? We might do that with the next person. That doesn't, it's not bad. It's just, I think everybody does that. Like as you kind of go through life, you pick up different things that you like and things that you don't like. Obviously it's problematic if it's, the rest of the cycle and moving fast. Staying Alive says, I feel love bombed right now. Dana is doing my questions. Yeah. Goofy Fur says, my ex-narcissist would say, I'm killing him because I'm so awful to him. Totally. That's so common. So common. So, like, I can't tell you how many times I have heard that from many different people. And I haven't heard like that in particular, but I've heard versions of that. I think probably a lot of people have heard versions of that. It's like, again, it's the whole, like, look at what you made me do. Like, look at what you're doing to me, right? You are crazy, you're delusional, you're manipulative, you're abusive, you're all of these things, when in fact, that's what they're doing. It's like, and you can't argue with a person, you can't be logical with an illogical person because they don't realize, I don't know, maybe they do. I think when they're in that fight or flight mode, when it's that switch flips and it's like me versus you, I don't think that they're aware of that necessarily. And so it just, like, they just go into attack mode. It's crazy. Stacy says, it's amazing how they can be and then turn on you. It took me 3.5 years to figure it out. I thought I was legit crazy. Yeah. And it makes sense, right? I think everybody feels like that because this stuff is not talked about. So when you encounter a person who's doing that projection stuff and they're doing the gaslighting, that's not common. Like, and so if you've never, and it's not done in movies, right? So that's another thing. So like all of the media imagery that talks about abusive relationships, it really focuses on physical abuse, right? There's not a lot of stuff that's out there that focuses on like emotional, verbal, psychological abuse. I think if there were, people would be more inclined, we would spot it because you would see what it looks like in motion. But this stuff is not taught. It's not discussed. I think there's a lot of seriously, the vast majority of mental health workers that I've known don't know about a lot of this stuff. I don't know why. I don't know. Like, I don't understand why this is not a more known thing. It's just very, very, very strange to me. Thomas says, I need to find a therapist who knows and who works with PTSD because not all of them know. Yes. I would agree with that. And so that would be something that you can call if you're going to shop around for a therapist. I'd recommend, calling a handful of them, talking to them, saying, this is the stuff that I encountered, this gaslighting and, or kind of whatever your situation was. I'm feeling like I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and I need some help with moving forward. And is this something that you really are familiar with? Not something that like had half of a class on 10 years ago in college, but like, do you work with people that have PTSD? Because what frustrates me is when people will say, oh yeah, I work with that, and then they don't. Because to me, that's right up there with malpractice, or it should be, because you're messing with people's minds, and you have a lot of very well-intentioned, mental health clinicians out there. But if they're not familiar with PTSD and they're trying to push a person to examine codependency or whatever, like right off of the bat, odds are you're going to feel very re-victimized. And this happens like, it's so frustrating. Okay, now that I'm saying this out loud, another way that might help you to increase your success with finding a therapist that's familiar with PTSD is what we were talking about earlier. Like, we've talked about this a couple times tonight. So it's just, I guess, the theme of the video is finding a therapist who's skilled in either EFT, which is like the tapping therapies, or EMDR, I'm drawing a blank, the eye movement desensitization reprogramming therapy. So those two tend to work really well for repressed trauma. So odds are, if they're familiar with those two therapies, then they're familiar with PTSD. So that might be kind of like a backdoor way to really go about it and have better luck. And we were talking earlier tonight too about those therapies and how a lot of people in very few sessions have had really good results with that. So that might be something that you look into. The tapping therapy, just kind of FYI, there are several videos on YouTube where like you can do it at home. So like you can watch a YouTube video, like you're tapping pressure points, you're saying certain things, you're releasing certain emotions. There's not a whole lot to it. It's just kind of focus and concentration and like repatterning your thinking. So I don't know if there's EMDR videos on YouTube, or if it would, I don't know how that would or wouldn't work. I don't know, because I'm not that familiar with it. But it's something to look into, especially the EFT ones for people that don't have insurance, or just if cost is a factor. So, yeah, that's a great point. Shades of Joe says, time does not heal all wounds. Things don't get better unless you use the time to actually work on your healing. I agree. And, it's, I think that's there's so many cool things about support groups, about talking to other people who have lived this. My guess is it's like, it's the same benefit as any group of people that have lived anything, right? So like a group of people that are going through cancer, or a group of people that have gone through, a grief support group that have gone through death, or experienced the death of a loved one, or any type of event where, it's nice when you have a group of other people, because you can hear about what worked for them, what didn't work for them. You can, formulate your own opinion, but it might introduce you to a lot of things that you never thought of. It's that constant validation that you're not alone and that you're not crazy, right? And that you can heal. So I think those three things are so powerful. just knowing that, because if you're in this alone, right? I mean, like so many people are saying, where you have never experienced something like this before, and you really think that your experience is really unique. I mean, that was one of the reasons I started making these YouTube videos and my blog. I really thought that my experience was like crazy unique. After my relationship with Jack, I kept telling myself, other people kept telling me this too, but I kept telling myself, like, Dana, okay, like this guy was a total sociopath. You crossed paths with him. Like, the odds of this happening are like really slim. Thinking to myself that there's not that many sociopaths in the world. Well, there are. And so I thought I could go back to how I was, as far as like taking people at face value and how I was going about things. And when it happened to me again with Steve a few years later, that's when I realized that, okay, this is not a coincidence. Like there's a pattern going on. There's something that I'm missing. And I couldn't figure out for the longest time, like where I was going wrong and how I could stop this. I mean, it was just really, really strange. And so, and then I had met another guy online, and then it was the exact same stuff again, except this guy was really scary right out of the gate. But of course, like he didn't say or do anything that I could point to and be like, that's problematic. Like it was just that feeling of this guy is bad news. I mean, it was just the bad feeling, but he was so enjoyable. He was so intelligent. I just really enjoyed his company. And I began thinking to myself that my experience was really, really unique. Like to get tangled up with two sociopaths in like a span of, five or so years, I just wanted to warn people. And I started my blog, and I'm typing about all of the stuff that I'm experiencing with this new guy, trying to figure out, is it me or is it him? And am I being hypervigilant, or like what's really going on, and all the back and forth. And then began making videos about my situation, thinking maybe my experiences, because I thought they were so unique, could help other people that are possibly going through this, not knowing like, oh yeah, there's lots of us out there. And then just seeing, the longer I get into this, really seeing like the full like level of how big of a problem this really is. Because I had no idea when I started doing this, none. And so it's a very isolating thing, right? Like if we're all walking around thinking it's just us, and then you realize, oh no, yeah, like it's not you, it's like everybody. So, hey, Kevin's here. Wake Kate is here. Lavender Curls is here. Kevin, were you the one that recommended the book Complex PTSD? I think it was you. I don't know. Maybe not. We'll see if he responds. Okay. Yes. Okay, it was you. Yes. I have there's so many people in all these different groups in the live stream and on Instagram, and everybody's got like different names across all of these different channels, and it's really hard for me to keep up with them. I started reading the book today for the book club, the Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. Freaking love it. I love it. I'm so glad. Thank you for bringing it up. It's, I'm only like 15% into it so far, and it's so many aha moments. So I'm super excited. I'm going to probably post my notes about it early, because my guess is I'm probably going to finish that book in like 2 days, because I had a hard time putting it down today. I was at work, and I was, every like down moment I had, I was reading that book. So really good book. Highly, like, Good job. Good recommendation. Okay, so people, let me back up a little bit. People are talking about intensity, and that was what I wanted to talk about before, and then I lost my train of thought. So I think there's a lot of us that really value like a deep connection, right? That we don't like small talk. I remember making a video about this. Oh my God, this couch, I swear. Why they would put a bar like through the middle of the couch is, and then like no padding over it, is beyond me. But I made a video about this, and it was interesting because we are our own baseline for normal, right? I thought I was somewhat alone in that. Like, I really don't like small talk. I really don't. I love hearing about what's really going on with people. I just love getting to know people and finding out what makes them tick and what are their hopes and dreams and goals and fears. And, I love conversations, obviously, right? We're going on 2 hours. Love conversations that go for hours on end where, to me, a great date would be, like just hanging out outside, watching the stars and talking about UFOs. I mean, that would be fantastic. I love stuff like that. So, but here's the thing with that. Okay. So I didn't see that as a problem until fairly recently, until I made that video. And then other people began commenting that they really liked that too. And then it dawned on me, that's something that we all need to watch out for. Because I think that, at least in my life, I tend to get really deep with people really fast. And, and again, like I've been in caretaking professions for going on 20 years. So, it's really personal, like when you're, bathing a person, right? Or there's no boundaries is what I'm saying. So I'm used to being in situations where there's really no boundaries, where you're talking about like your intimate health details or what is going on in a person's life, or, major discussions about death or sickness or grief or whatever. So, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoy that about being a nurse and about when I was teaching, when I was a teacher and things like that. However, in our personal life, that is a form of rushing intimacy, right? And so we can get ourselves in trouble if we're wanting to get into these really deep conversations with a person, especially if that person's an emotional manipulator, because we might be thinking that we're having this intense conversation and that because we're going to be most likely sharing at the same level they're sharing, right? Because that's how people normally have a conversation, right? So if you're talking about, something that's kind of surface, like your favorite chocolate chip recipe, and, I'm probably going to respond to that story with an equal story at about the equal level of intensity or lack of, right? But if I start talking about like string theory or UFOs or life after death, or, you're getting more into your thoughts on things and who you are, then they're going to match that story too. But again, like it may or may not be true. And so here we are thinking that we're really bonding with this person and we're not. And so it's important, even though I think a lot of us do like really in-depth conversations, to really go slow when we're meeting a new person. So just a thought. Nina says, being alone is an essential part of healing from their abuse. At first it feels counterintuitive. My narc chased all my good friends away by hating them, or he wanted to cheat on me with them. Yeah, and so that's, isolation is a really big part of any type of abusive relationship. And so there's multiple ways for like abusive people to isolate their target. and they can, physically move somebody out into the middle of nowhere, or even out into the middle of a city, right, where they don't know anybody. So they're moving you away from your support system, maybe to another city or state or country or location. They're maybe encouraging a person to quit their job or take multiple jobs and take care of them, to where now you can't have a social life. They're having issues with all your friends. They're saying, oh, I don't want you to have any opposite sex friends because, I'm not okay with that. And different people have different thoughts on that, but or maybe your same sex, and of course too depends on like the sexual orientation of your relationship, right? But assuming it's like a heterosexual relationship, if with all of your female friends, if they're saying, oh well, they give you really bad advice, or I think they're trouble, or she's your one friend is too opinionated, or she doesn't know us, she's going to create trouble, and then they start doing this like divisive stuff to where you don't have any support system and you don't have any opinions other than theirs. And this is very, very, very common, and it's a subtle, slow process, and if we're so in love, then we're not seeing it, and even if we do see it, we might not mind it, because it's the feeling of, oh, but I love them. And so we're wanting to spend all of our time with them because of all of the, the love bombing and the emotional intensity that we do feel when we're with them. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up. Marcel says, after my narcissist discarded me, I'm always crying. I cannot sleep and cannot eat. And Valenta says, I send you energy, Marcel. It will get better. Oh, and I keep crying every day. Okay, so a lot of that is I know it hurts so bad. And, it really does pass with time. It really, really does. And if you have any type of support system around you, focus on you right now. This is all about you and your recovery. Do things that make you feel good. And it's okay. Your body's in shock, and you underwent this trauma, right? And so you're having a very normal reaction to a very abnormal situation. And so being in a highly emotional dynamic like this, and then, after they just up and leave, and it's so intensely painful, it's very normal that you can't eat and that you can't sleep. And kind of doing what you can during this time to try to make this period just go as smoothly as it possibly can. So just kind of like doubling or tripling up on your self-love, taking time for like a hot bath, not getting upset with yourself if you find yourself crying a lot, or just being extra good to yourself right now, and just realize like this too shall pass. I have a video series. There's only a few videos in there right now, but it's on healing from CPTSD. If you look in my video playlists, and I talk about some of the things that I did, and people also in the comments of those videos talk about things that they did as well that helped them to move forward. So I'm a big fan of affirmations and doing things, not to say to avoid your emotions, but these are a lot of intense emotions for 24 hours a day. You can take time to just practice setting them down. So doing things, like watching comedy. I watched a lot of Dave Chappelle. Like back then, especially that one skit where he was Prince. Do you remember that skit? Has anybody else seen it? It's freaking hilarious. It was Prince, and it was one of those Charlie Murphy stories that they would tell, and it was just that I've seen that sketch like so many times, and it still cracks me up. So, watching comedies and just giving yourself a break, realizing, okay, yeah, I'm profoundly sad and I'm just feeling devastated, but I'm gonna just go get lost in something else. Like, I'm gonna go watch a movie, right? Or I'm gonna go watch some stand-up comedy for a little bit, or getting some affirmations or a mantra. My mantra for a long time was, when I was going through that rage period, was the best revenge is a good life, and just steering myself in that direction. So Sherry says, I have PTSD and it is getting worse. My therapist says it's because my brain is healing. New triggers are coming along with higher intensity of pain. The shock and numbness is wearing off. Yeah. Okay. So for most people, okay, just kind of FYI, most people that do have the PTSD feelings, right, that you're going through this, it's definitely the most like the first 6 months to a year out, right? Most people, it tends to resolve itself within about 24 months. There's things that you can do during that time frame. So we were talking earlier tonight about the tapping therapy, EFT, emotional freedom. I think Josh said it was techniques, emotional freedom technique, where you say, you can look it up on YouTube. And then there's another therapy called EMDR. It's eye movement desensitization reprogramming. Both of those therapies tend to be highly successful for people that have PTSD. They're actually used in VA hospitals and with people that have intense PTSD. So possibly ask your therapist if she's familiar with it, or if she can refer you to another therapist who's familiar with it. A lot of people have really great luck with that within a few sessions, even. So, and again, you can look on YouTube for EMDR. There's videos on it. It'll kind of show you how it's done, and there's a lot of videos that talk about people like with their experience and how it's worked for them and kind of their story. It's really interesting. So that might be something to consider as well. So let's see. Thomas says, well, I've experienced PTSD a lot longer than that. Is this normal? Yeah, Staying Alive says it never goes away, apparently. I think, here's how I look at this, right? So people talk about healing, right? And when we heal from this, there's this expectation by a lot of people, I think myself included, that we would go back to being the way we were. And that cannot be, okay? And that's okay. I just want you to know that that's okay. So this is how life goes, right? We go through situations and we grow and we change after them. Every situation in our life is transformative. So healing in this context does not mean that we return to who we were. It means that we take this situation and we use it as a stepping stone to get to the next highest place. We use it for our highest and best good. Even if we don't know what that means, even if we don't know how to do that, we just set our mindset on, I'm not going to let this destroy my life. I think that's a good starting line. Okay? So then you say, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to use it for my highest and greatest good. And you just set your sights on moving in that direction. That's a really great point. Kevin says, I don't want to go back to who I was. I was a target. Yep. I agree, and for me personally, and it's taken me several years to get to this place, but I these experiences, and it took me a couple times of going around this mountain before I really realized what was going on. And frankly, I think it really took me starting my blog, starting my YouTube channel, and what I really now that I'm saying all this out loud, I think really what helped me to get where I am today with my level of thinking and my level of health has been hearing the combined experiences of everybody else. To me, that's really helped to fill in or to connect the dots, like across the board. Things I hadn't even thought of, like the dots were connected. So that was really powerful. But these situations have brought about like a tremendous amount of personal growth and self-awareness that I would not have had any other way. And for that, I am like outrageously thankful for it. I know that sounds crazy. Not saying I want to repeat it, but I did not realize so many things. And the thing is, if it hadn't have been Jack or Steve, it would have been other people. My life would have continued to not work optimally because I didn't realize I had empty buckets. I didn't realize that I had these vulnerabilities. I didn't realize that I was continuing to kind of, that I was setting up these patterns. I mean, I was not aware that all of this was subconscious. And, it's one of those things, like once we know better, we can do better. So, okay, let's see. Doug says, Dana, answer Justine Clark's question. Okay, Justine Clark, let me find your question. Let's see. Wow, okay, that's a great question. She says, I would like your advice on how to de-escalate stalking behavior other than a restraining order or ignoring him. So this is a tough one, because my guess is, well, and maybe you'll have to fill me in. I don't want to guess. Okay, it looks like she's filed a police report. She has not gotten a restraining order yet. She's trying to stay on top of it. So, I think, this person and this situation best. So this is where it gets tricky, right? Because there's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all answer here. It's, sometimes a restraining order can make things worse, right? Sometimes ignoring a person and going no contact can make things worse. So, I think asking yourself, kind of really thinking, okay, what do you need to do? What do you feel you need to do in order to stay safe and sane? At a minimum, if I were you, I would have protection, some sort of self-protection with you at all time, whether that's, I say mace, but if you're going to get mace, definitely get a kind that has a really far spray, because you don't want, this is my hesitation with mace, is that I think it can be a false sense of security for a lot of people, because they think they might even intentionally put themselves in harm's way, thinking, oh, I've got mace. But mace cans can be difficult to use. Like you need to really, whatever kind of self-protection you have, make sure you know how to use it. Make sure you've actually used it. Make sure it's something that's intuitive enough if you're in a panic that you can quickly get to it and use it. Because a lot of these cans, like you've got to twist something and then pull something back and then spray, and your brain is not going to be thinking clearly, like if you actually have to use it. So there's cans of like bear mace that you can get, and they're more difficult to get in certain states. I'm a big fan of bear mace. So it's a can like a can of, hairspray, or when it's like a big size can, and it will drop a charging bear I think there's like a good 20 or 50-foot radius. To me, that's really what you want. It's something that you don't have to get close to the person. They're already aggressive, and they're already in that mindset, right? Of it's me versus you. So, where you're not having to get close to them. Some people carry, a knife or something. Again, like whatever you carry on you, you've got to make sure that you're okay with using it. So, you know, only you know the situation best. And I would, like I said, I would really keep multiple things. So if let's say you do end up going with bear mace, right? And the other benefit to bear mace is I think it also dyes a person like bright orange or bright blue. So, because it's like for park rangers, people can see like that's an angry bear. That's like my kind of self protection. Like I like that. I'm okay with using that. To have, if you live, I don't know if you have small children, or again, like what your situation is, but if you can have multiple cans of bear mace around your house if they are bothering you. You can have video cameras. Again, like a sporting goods store, they have video cameras that are motion sensor that you can put up. Put up one like a birdhouse, or somehow like outside, outside of doors or windows or whatever they're doing, and it'll capture things on film. Keeping a paper trail as much as you possibly can. It's tough. It's tough. Sometimes, and it can be all of the power and control things. So people are at the most risk of danger when they go to leave. And it's because the narcissist is losing power and control over you and over the situation. So, doing like, so okay, there's a whole thing called a safety plan that is helpful. You can, if you go to my website, you can search for it and it's in there. There's, and that we'll kind of talk, about keeping safe and those kinds of things. It just it depends on how much of a danger this person is. I mean, some people have gone to extent of moving like across the country. So, and sometimes that's what it takes, because if you're with a person who is that persistent and they're not letting up, and you find that you're in a state of hypervigilance and like hyper arousal all the time, where you're terrified, you're looking over your shoulder, they're bothering you at work, they're not letting up, you don't ever feel safe, I would encourage you to move. Like, do what you need to do to get, like, life is too short. It's not worth the stress. So, okay, you've already left. This is 10 months later. Okay, but you can leave in 2 more months. So if you're going, if I'm catching this correctly, because the chat's going fast, if you're moving quick, in a few months, then then I would keep it on the down low. I would not talk to other people, I wouldn't mention where you're moving. When you do move, I would encourage you to get a post office box for at least the first year. Get all of your mail. When you're getting your mail forwarded, then there's no physical address on file. It's just your post office box. Your cell phone, if you have a smartphone, making sure that you're turning off any like location app that people can see where your phone is. If you don't know how to do that, then, and I'm not sure if I even fully know how to do that, because there's multiple apps out there that track those kinds of things. Going to the iPhone store, like Verizon or whatever, and asking them and seeing what you need to do to scrub your phone. kind of FYI too, I don't know if you guys knew this. Verizon, I believe it's Verizon. Verizon offers, I think, free phones to people that are in abusive relationships that are trying to leave. So that's just something to take into consideration. I don't know if it's all Verizon stores, but a lot of them do. So that might be, if you're in that situation, you're trying to get out, you're afraid that your phone is being monitored. That's a thought for like a temporary phone. So let's see. Shades of Joe says, well, actually, real quick before I get into that, I'm just kind of thinking about some other stuff. Changing locks where you are. You can call the non-emergency police too. I've like called them so many times, it's ridiculous, and say, this person's bothering me. This is what's going on. Can you guys do extra patrols in my neighborhood? And you can do motion sensor lights outside of your house, or if you're in an apartment or some place like that, talking to your landlord about that, where if anybody comes on your property, the light will turn on, and it just gives you that much more notice, and it'll hopefully scare them away. If there's also a strategy out there, some people use it where they are in these kinds of situations. Somebody had mentioned this name a while back, and I love it, and I think it's brilliant, but it's kind of for people that can't easily go no contact. It's kind of like a version of going gray rock, which is where you become emotionally detached and very boring. So you're not doing anything to provoke them. Like, you're not talking about a new boyfriend, you're not talking about a new job, you're not talking about anything that's going to really trigger that mindset of me versus you, now you're competition. That's what you're trying to avoid. So the gal that we were talking about, this strategy, she calls it dumb like a fox. So it's really like crazy like a fox, but you're playing dumb. And so if you have to communicate with this person, or even if you think that might help, because again, the situation better, and this is going to sound maybe really crazy to some people, but it might de-escalate the situation. So again, only you know your situation best. But if they're really hung up on things, right? And again, because they have that mindset of you're the problem, that there's nothing wrong with them. If you're comfortable doing it, to take full responsibility for things. I know that sounds really crazy, but it can help. And to say things like, you know what, I'm just really sorry. You're a great guy. Things just aren't, they're just not working. I could never be the woman that you want. And just realize that you're dealing with a person who is, like, you're doing what you have to do, basically, to just stay safe and sane and back away. So we were talking about this earlier, like the 4 different approaches to handling dangerous situations. There's the fight, there's the flight, there's the freeze, and then there's the fawn. And then the fawn approach is the fawning over them, right? It's the like people pleasing, it's the compliments, it's the being nice in order to fend off an attack. So that's kind of what this strategy is. It's just saying, building them up and then taking responsibility for things. It can be really, really hard if you're, right? Like, it can be really, really hard because they can be very provoking. You might have a lot of CPTSD stuff going on. You're afraid for your life, these kinds of things. But if you're feeling like that might be a better way to do it, if you're seeing them continually out in public, to just try to diffuse the situation that way. It's just a tool in your toolkit. I'm not saying one way is better than the other way. It's just something that people should know, because so often no contact is pushed, And I agree. I think no contact is a great way to go, but I think sometimes people need to play the whole strategy of like dumb like a fox, right? Or the whole fawn. I think I like the fawn strategy better before they go no contact, because no contact can really trigger rage in somebody. Like, how dare you? You think, like you're not going to talk to me? Because again, remember, in their mind, they're the victims of us. So just some thoughts. Somebody had asked about their children and how to tell if the ex-wife, the narcissist ex-wife, is possibly abusing them. It depends on the age of the children. So if you have young children, what's really common for younger children is they'll start regressing. So they're bedwetting, not even necessarily bedwetting, but it could also just be like wetting their pants. And let's say they're like 6 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, and they don't normally do that. So behaviors that you're experiencing with your children that aren't normal. So being fearful of going over there, crying, acting out, talking about night terrors, getting, claiming to be getting sick before they're supposed to go over to somebody's house. You see behavior changes in them. So maybe they were very outgoing before, and now they're very quiet, they're very distant. These kinds of things are often a sign that something is going on. So if that kind of stuff, for sure, if that kind of stuff is going on, it might be worth a call to, Child Protective Services, and you can always make it anonymous. Like, you don't have to say that it's you. And and then too, just talking to your kids and trying to keep that relationship open, so that they know, like, okay, we can talk about anything. We don't have secrets here. And, there's a game when I used to work with, at-risk kids, and in a group home, and I worked with teenagers. And so one of the things that we would do, and so these kids were they were tough kids, and they weren't really in touch with their feelings for a wide variety of reasons. One of the things that we would do that I really liked, that I would encourage, I think it's a nice, I think, kind of bonding thing for people in general to do, but especially with children of any age, is we used to call it the high-low game. And so we would have dinner together, and we would go around the table, and everybody would say what their high was for the day and then what their low was for the day. And so that can be a great way to kind of get kids out of their shell, especially if they're, this kind of stuff is hard enough for us to go through it, right? But for kids, it can be that much harder. They don't have the vocabulary for it. They don't have the coping skills or the framework of understanding. So trying to keep communication open, talking about emotions, just making sure that they feel safe and secure and loved is just really, really important. And just, if you see anything suspicious, to go from there, So I hope that helps. I'm sorry that you're going through that. That's really got to be tough. I can only imagine. Jessica says, I'm a survivor of narc abuse, and now I keep attacking frenemies. Attacking or attracting? What am I doing wrong? I want real connection. I'm going to... Hold on a second. I got to get some more water here. Attracting. Okay, that's what I thought you meant. Interesting slip there, right? So, yes, the book. If you've ever read the book Psychopath Free, that was our book club book for June. Fantastic. And one of the things he says in there, and I agree completely, is to really be careful about meeting and bringing in new people into like your inner circle after narc abuse. So here's kind of my take on this, okay? And it's interesting. It's so weird because I keep looking at my own situation and seeing how these different things have played out. I think what most people do, okay, I don't think it's just me or just you. I think what most people do, if we're in a situation, right? So let's say if we're in if a person is in a relationship with like an overt narcissist, right? They're with somebody that's like grandiose and arrogant and difficult and brash and just like that guy, right? Like, ugh. So if you're with like that guy and then that relationship, goes to crazy town and you hop off that train, it's really common for people the next relationship they get into to think to themselves, and I think a lot of this is like a subconscious thing, right? That think to themselves, okay, this profile of this person, like these behaviors cause me pain. This grandiosity, the selfishness, the level of entitlement, he is an outright jerk, right? This person caused me pain. Very, to me, understandable, right? Why we would go do the exact opposite. And so then what happens? People then date or befriend people that are more of the covert narcissists, because in their mind, they're trying to avoid people that are selfish and arrogant and grandiose. So not realizing that, being a superficially charming, being love bombing, being overly attentive, being wanting to move at breakneck speed, like showering you with attention and affection, these are red flags too. And so they think, okay, this is good because it's the opposite of what I had before, but it's not. It's just the other side of the coin. It's the other side of the problematic coin, right? So, and I think people, and this is part of the reason it's such a, people tend to be in more than one relationship with abusive people. And so then the next relationship, say that a person might go from like overt narcissist to covert narcissist, then possibly back more to like overt narcissist, or like a lesser degree of overt narcissist, or maybe somebody that's just not emotionally available. Maybe they're not a narcissist at all. They're just not emotionally available. And then, so on and on it goes, right? It's the same thing with friends. So, if you're finding friends, and again, this is very common, and I think a lot of people have had this too, where you start looking around and examining a lot of the significant relationships in your life, and you realize, oh my gosh, I've had a lot of emotional manipulators play important roles in my life, and like you never connected the dots before. So if you have these empty buckets, right? So the video on my playlist for red flags of codependency, it's a video on love bombing. Watch that video. I think that'll really help you to examine your empty buckets, to see where your vulnerabilities are, to see what you're missing and what you need to do in order to stop, like to shut the door on this and not have these people continue to come into your life. They still might come in to some extent, but odds are you're going to see the behavior a lot sooner than you did before. A lot of this is just, it's kind of awareness of what problematic behavior looks like, and then also having, filling your buckets and having solid boundaries. So, but I think a good way to look at this, and I had a really hard time understanding how this pertained to my life for a very long time, and I Had anybody mentioned this to me several years ago, I would have gotten really defensive. But so realize that what I'm about to say might make some people feel really defensive, and I get it. But I think, so just try to sit with what I'm going to say and realize that it comes from a place of love and concern, and that is not my intention to harm anybody, okay? I think a good way to tell what's going on within us is to look around. Our external environment is always a reflection of our internal environment. Actually, let me take that back. It's our external environment is a reflection of our internal environment when we're adults. So this doesn't count when you're a child, okay? So whatever's going on in your life as a child, you didn't have a choice. So as an adult, if you're looking around and you're seeing things in your external environment that you don't like, so you're finding yourself with people that are frenemies, or multiple relationships with highly problematic people, or things aren't working. Try to release judgment from what you're seeing in your outer environment. I know that can be hard because it can be really discouraging. Like, oh my gosh, how do I have, I went from like an, emotional manipulator as a spouse to now this person, now I'm working at a job and my boss is a frickin' narc. Like, or this person that I thought was a friend is now an emotional manipulator. Like, am I cursed? Like, what's going on? It just means that there's still some stuff that needs like unresolved within you, and to not panic when you see it. And I'm definitely by no stretch mean that it's okay for those people to be interacting with you the way that they are, because it's for sure not. But if you're not getting the results that you want, it's coming from stuff that's inside. So I know that can be a really tough thing to hear, but I would try to view that as it's a good tool. It's a good tool in your toolkit to see kind of what's working and what's not working and why. And then here's the other thing too about like people taking blame or responsibility for this kind of stuff. Keep in mind, like about, estimates are something like 90% or so of our behavior comes from our subconscious. So this is not your fault. I mean, if you're having these patterns in your life over and over and over again, odds are this stuff is stemming from like, deep in here. So a lot of it's just like bringing it to the surface, and then we can deal with it. But so there's no blame, there's no nothing. It's just there's stuff that's still going on. So let me scroll down. Okay, good. Good, Jessica. I'm glad that helped. Jane Doe asks, what about, I'm assuming adult children of narcs? Is that what that stands for? How much healing potential are we capable of? I fully believe, like, I really, maybe I'm like, I might sound like Pollyanna or like Little Miss Sunshine. I really, really, really believe in like massive amounts of possibility, like beyond adult children of narcissists. Okay. Beyond what, like, I think the average people think. So there's a concept out there. It's called PTG. So we're all familiar with PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder. PTG stands for post-traumatic growth. And it's a real thing. And so they're just doing this has kind of become like a new thing. And the concept behind post-traumatic growth is that it was developed by some psychologists and psychiatrists who began really examining the current state of psychology. And they realized, okay, here we are bringing people that are in pain, that are dealing with trauma, where our goal, they're kind of on like a number line from like -10 to 0. We're kind of bringing them to like 0, right? From like moving the line from like -10 to 0 to where like they can function in life. But then they began asking the question of how can we get them beyond that to where they're not, so where they're moving from like victim to survivor to thriver. And so that's what this whole concept, this whole branch of psychology is about, is it's called positive psychology, is moving people to be into the more thriving. So yes, I agree completely. Shades of Joe says, I think a person's potential for healing is directly proportional to the belief of its possibility. You will get as well as you think you can. So, yeah, I agree completely. So here's the other thing that's really cool about this. So cognitive dissonance is what gets us into these situations, right? In large part, it's cognitive dissonance, right? It's when our beliefs don't match our behaviors. It's that mental distress. And then all of a sudden, now we find ourselves justifying our actions, right? I fully believe that how we get to thrive, how we move forward and thriving, like what's worked for me in my life, and I think what's worked for a lot of other people too, has been to, it's the opposite of it's so like obvious, right? It's the opposite of cognitive dissonance. It's cognitive resonance. And I'm not really sure if this is known as that. This is kind of my own take on it. So it's where our beliefs match our behaviors. I think it's so cool. So, because they have to line up, right? So if you change a belief, this is how this goes, right? If you change a belief, then you have to change a behavior. If you change a behavior, then you're going to have to start changing beliefs. And on it goes. So whatever you really start thinking is possible becomes possible. So if your belief is, so for me, okay, for my situation, I had no reason to have this belief other than like I just knew that I was not going to let what happened to me ruin my life. Like that was my like line in the sand. Like this is not going to ruin my life. Then I asked myself, okay, I told myself, okay, now I'm going to take this and I'm going to use this for my highest and greatest good. That was kind of, I think, my next step in thinking. I had no idea how. When I was at rock bottom, I was at frickin' rock bottom. Like I had nothing, everything in my life it could not have been more in shambles. So, knowing that I wanted to take what was going to happen to me, use it for my highest and greatest good, what I feel like really added rocket fuel to that was deciding that I was going to take this and use it for the highest and greatest good for other people too. That was kind of an added driving force. Like it just had helped to give my pain a purpose. And so once I developed that belief, then it was my behaviors began to get in line with that, because then it just became, it was a very like stubborn decision that I made, and then it was not easy. It was definitely an uphill climb, but knowing that I knew I had a limit on how far I was going to let myself backslide, and knowing that I had a vision to steer into, that's what I needed. And I think that's really kind of what everybody needs. So if you want to look at some people that I would recommend, Tony Robbins, I think, is a fantastic start. I freaking love that guy. So watch a lot of Tony Robbins. He talks about like behavior shifts, mindset, what's possible, lots of like really empowering stuff there, filling your brain with empowerment and nourishing yourself it really is huge. So I've like, and I think Melanie Tanya Evans also is a big fan of this. I think Lisa Romano is too. And there's a few others that are big on this, where these events really can be some of the most positive things that end up happening to us. I know that sounds crazy. I know it does. Eckhart Tolle, if you're familiar with him, you can YouTube him. He is a really entertaining guy to watch. He talks about events in terms of we assign judgment on things, right? So we say this is bad, this is good. Our perspective of bad and good is limited to this like snapshot in time, right? So this event happens, we're like, that's awful. Maybe, perhaps, right? But if you think back in your own life, how many traumatic things or quote unquote bad things have happened to you that have ended up being something really good has come out of it, or something, there were lessons that were just phenomenal in it. And so Eckhart Tolle kind of describes this whole concept as events in life are like a thread in a tapestry that we never see complete. So I don't know. There's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of event, and here's a kind of another thing to just chew on, which I think is really powerful and interesting, is the thought that events in life, and I forget who said it, I don't know if it was Carl Jung, the psychologist, but events in life are neutral in that we're the ones that assign meaning to them. So kind of along the same lines, right? So if we're saying this is bad or this is good, like, and we don't see the full picture, we don't really know. We're just saying based on that time. So kind of like what I was saying with my experiences with Jack and Steve, at the time, they were absolutely awful. They were devastating. If I were to remove judgment from them and just say those situations just were, like they just were, because life's not fair, right? Like we get hung up on this idea that life is supposed to be a certain way. And I think that's, the Buddhists would talk about this and would say, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And so a lot of our suffering comes from the attachment to ideas that things should be a certain way. And so if events are just neutral and we assign meaning to them, then to me it seems logical that we would assign the most empowering meaning possible. So it's kind of deep stuff there, but very interesting when you really start thinking about that. There's people are talking about Tony Robbins. Yeah, there's a lot of Tony Robbins stuff on YouTube. Some other interesting stuff that's really far out there is, but it's kind of interesting. It's interesting. I think it's interesting. You guys are going to really think I'm nuts. There's a speaker out there by the name of Abraham Hicks, and she was the gal that really, I would say invented or maybe not invented. I don't know what you want to necessarily say she does. It's really far out there. She was the one that really introduced the concept of law of attraction that the movie The Secret was based on. And there's hundreds of Abraham Hicks videos on YouTube. It's interesting, and a lot of it's very encouraging. She's got some phenomenal ideas. One of her ideas that I absolutely love is the concept of a focus wheel two concepts: a concept of a focus wheel, and then the concept of a rampage, what she calls rampages of appreciation. So if you look those up, you can see them. They're really, like, really interesting, really powerful stuff. So I think that healing from this, making this into something, not just like healing from this, right? Not just moving from victim to survivor, but moving from survivor to thriver. That's where we want to be, right? So, and I think to get there, it's not just like one thing. There's a combination of tools in our toolkit that will help move a person, down that number line to where they're a thriver. Interesting. That's Cracky Coco says, how can I stop avoiding getting good grades at the university? I feel like it's fear of failure, maybe caused by my narcissist parents. That is a good question. Well, yeah, I think you'll have to kind of get clear on what do you think that's driving that. If you grew up with perfectionist parents, or the opposite, parents that continually told you that you would amount to nothing, then there's a lot of like unresolved stuff going on there. And good timing. So the book club that we're reading, the book club book that we're reading for July is a book called Complex PTSD: From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. It's on Amazon. If you're a Kindle Unlimited member, it's free, by the way. So he talks about that. He talks about different messages that we got as children and healing from our past. I would highly, highly recommend reading that book. So, and I just got into it, and he starts with talking about that. So it's like healing your mindset. So yeah. You have to read it and then let us know if you have any aha moments. I think it's hard when we have parents like that are perfectionist or insulting, right? Louise Hay is another great example, yes. So, okay, sorry, that was off track. When we have a parent that's giving us, either like the idea that we somehow need to like earn their love or their respect or their affection by getting this, they're like perfectionist parents, or they're the opposite where we're the scapegoat and they're blaming us for everything, right? And nothing we do is good enough. It can be really hard to overcome that, understandably so. And, I think a lot of that stuff is just really buried in a person's subconscious mind. So awareness. I was watching a video tonight. Another YouTuber that I like to watch is Leo from actualize.org. I don't know if you watched him, but really interesting videos. He's got a ton of them. And he was talking about awareness being curative, meaning once you're aware of something, then that in itself is a big part of the cure, because you're bringing awareness to it. So then once you're watching it, like once you're watching that behavior in motion, then you can kind of start examining it. You can start becoming curious. So you can replace judgment, right, with curiosity. I think that's kind of the difference there. So if you're not getting the grades that you want, if you're not getting any outcome in general in life that you want, to slow it down, to realize that all of our behavior is meeting some sort of need. So, and that's powerful. It's really powerful when you stop to think about it. So if a person is, if you're in debt, if you're overweight, if you're underweight, if you're like whatever you're doing that you want to change, if you're drinking too much, if you're, you're not getting the grades that you want in school, these kinds of things, that behavior is meeting some sort of need. And to try to release judgment from yourself and replace it with curiosity and think about what is going on, like what's driving that behavior. So, and then once you can kind of figure out the void that it's, the need that it's been meeting, then you can replace it with other things that are more nourishing and more healthy for you. So Annie, and I'm sorry, I've seen a couple of your questions fly by, but the chat goes really fast and I have to stop it when I talk because I can't read it and talk at the same time. So Annie is concerned that she might be a narcissist. So here's the thing. So narcissism is on a scale, right? And it's on a scale, and there's what's called healthy narcissism, okay, which is kind of like confidence in oneself, and then there's unhealthy narcissism. The issue with narcissists, as far as like personality disordered, extreme selfishness, is it's not so much their behavior, because lots of people can have bad behavior. It's the fact that they don't care about their bad behavior and that they don't ever think that they have a problem. So if you're concerned that you're seeing, if you go, especially if you go through my red flags of a narcissist series, I think that's a lot of people, and I get it, start watching them and they're like, oh no, like that's me, I do that too. Codependent people also do a lot of the same behavior, but it's for different reasons. So, and at the end of the day, if you're sincere, if you see problematic behavior within yourself and you're concerned about it and you think, well, I would change that, or if you have empathy, right? And people know, like, if you care, right? Then you're fine. Don't worry about it. Like, change what you can. That's all any of us can do, right? If we have some sort of problematic, none of us are perfect, right? But all we can do is be willing to look within and to figure out what kind of behavior, problematic behavior do I have, and then go from there. So I think there's a lot of people, especially if you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist or have had controlling, difficult, demanding, selfish parents, or even parents that worked all the time or that were not emotionally available, okay? Parents that you didn't have a solid connection with. A lot of times people, children especially, tend to take on kind of more of this me first mentality as a coping mechanism. So there's some stuff to kind of sort out there. She said, I'm going to tone it down, but she can be a really difficult witch sometimes. She says, but I feel love and empathy when people are hurt. Well, to me, that sounds very normal. I think most people can be a difficult witch sometimes too, And again, you just have to kind of figure out what do you like. It's part of self-awareness, and that I think grows and changes as we grow and change. So the insights that you have into yourself now are going to be very different that you have in 6 months or 6 years from now. And as you see any problematic behavior along the way, then you can work on it. So, I wouldn't resign yourself to being a narcissist. You might have some narcissistic tendencies, but you know, definitely it's if you have empathy and you do care and you are open to changing these things, then there's not an issue. So, okay, guys, I got to get to bed. We're going on 3 hours. And thank you so much for your time and for all of this. And I really enjoy it. So thank you. Again, great questions, great conversation. If anybody wants to read that book, I'm so excited to read it. The Complex PTSD book. There's a link in the description box below once this video goes live. And but I mean, again, it's free right now on Kindle Unlimited through Amazon if you're a member. And you can go to my website, thriveafterabuse.com, and go to the link that says book club, and it'll take you to where the discussion area is. So lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really, 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 really can move forward and heal from this. I fully believe that with every ounce of my being. So take care. I'll see you next week, Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, bye.